I wove the idea of individual responsibility through 12 rules. Well, we might begin by thinking about how that's related to the idea of free speech. It's like you have to find your way in the world, let's say, with all of your peculiarities, your idiosyncrasies and your differences. And the way you do that is by acting in the world, but the way you prepare to act is by thinking. And really what you're doing when you're thinking, there's a philosopher named Alfred North Whitehead who said something very intelligent about thinking. He said that the reason we think is so that our thoughts can die instead of us. Right? And it's a Darwinian idea. So the way animals adapt to the world across time is that animals produce variant offspring, many of them. And most of them are unsuccessful and die. But a few of them are successful enough in that time and place to reproduce, and so the animal keeps living across the millennia, varying slightly as it does so to adapt to the transformations of the environment. Human beings do the same thing, but we also have figured out how to abstract that. And so what we do when we think is that we produce a fictional world that's a simulation of the real world, and we populate that simulated world with simulations of us. And then we let those simulations play out in the simulated world, and the ones that are successful, we embody and act out, and the ones that are unsuccessful, we abandon and let die. And we do that when we're thinking in dreams, and we do that when we think in stories, and we even do that when we think in words, although it's not as obvious. When you argue internally, which is what you do when you think, you have an avatar that manifests itself as one point of view and an avatar that manifests itself as another, and you let them engage in conflict, and the one that loses you let go of. That's a sacrifice. And if you're discussing something with someone and it's important, then you both put your viewpoints forward and you analyze the consequences of the dispute, and then you walk away with any luck wiser than you were, so that you can embody a mode of being that's more likely to be successful. And you do that in large part, by exercising your freedom of speech. And you might think, well, why freedom of speech and not freedom of thought? And the answer to that is, don't be thinking that you think. Because thinking is very hard, and most people can't think at all. And even if you can think, you're not very good at it. I mean, think about what you have to do technically to think. First of all, you have to formulate the problem. That's hard enough, and you have to formulate it precisely. Then you have to generate multiple potential solutions to the problem, and then you have to let those solutions argue themselves into a hierarchy internally. And so you have to be able to tolerate that stress, right? You can't just be one thing if you're going to think. Because thinking isn't just saying that what I think is right. That's not thinking at all. Thinking is questioning whether or not what you think is right. And that's really hard. It's very demanding. And you can do that to some degree, but you're not as good at it as you think, even if you're a pretty good thinker. Mostly the way you think is by talking. And you talk, and mostly when you talk and think, it's contentious, as you know, if you've ever had an intimate relationship with someone. Because an intimate relationship, if it has any worth at all, is a place where there's tremendous contention, but it's bounded within something approximating mutual respect and the willingness to continue to play the game across time. And the reason that an intimate relationship is contentious is because life is very, very difficult, and people are different, and we face extraordinarily complex problems together, like how to make a living and how to operate properly in our careers, and how to rank order the importance of our careers, and how to manage our domestic economies, and how to discipline our kids, and whether or not to have kids, and how to enter middle age, and how to grow old gracefully, and how to live productively, and where to vacation, and all of these things, which are extraordinarily difficult problems. And the only way that we can solve them is by butting heads to some degree and communicating freely about what the possibilities are and negotiating a solution. And that's thinking. And in order to do that thinking, you have to be able to speak freely, and you certainly have to be willing to offend someone. I mean, of all the stupid questions I've ever been asked by journalists, the question, what makes you think you have the right to offend someone by what you say, is by far the most miraculously ignorant. And I say that because, well, You know, it just sets me back on my heels to some degree, because I think, well, what's your claim here? Your first claim is, we could hypothetically discuss something important without one of us getting upset. It's like, that's not going to happen. If you ever discuss anything important with anyone, including just discussing it with yourself, not only are you going to get upset, you're going to get so upset that you probably won't even do it. You know, you think, well, I have a difficult problem. What's your first reaction? Well, I'm going to sit right here and think about that. It's like, no, that isn't your reaction. Your reaction is to go, like, play a video game or watch a YouTube video or vacuum your bedroom or do the dishes or whatever you can do, not to think about that. That's what you're going to do. So, you know, and then if you're going to have a discussion with your wife or your husband or your kids and it's about something important, it's like, if you're a normal person, your heart rate goes up and it's like it's demanding, and then you have to think it through, and then you're probably wrong and you're going to stumble over your words, and God only knows if you're going to reach a solution, and you can't tell if it's going to mean the end of your damn relationship. And like, the catastrophe lurks everywhere when you're discussing difficult issues, and the rule is something like, but you can't offend anyone. It's like, well then, okay, fine, then you never get to talk about anything that's important with anyone ever, including yourself. It's like, that's supposed to be the rule. Then you think, well, even if it's not quite that bad, it's like, let's say, so here I'm addressing about 850 people, something like that. It's like, what's the probability that I could talk about anything that any of you would ever want to listen to for more than about 15 seconds, you know, that would grip your interest, without me offending at least one person in this room with each sentence? There's 1,000 people in here, you know, and some people are unbelievably easy to offend. There's that. They're just looking for a reason to be offended. So there's that problem. But if we're going to deal with things that are solid and contentious, and why talk about things that we already all agree on? We've already solved those problems. We can only really talk about things we don't agree on. It's the only thing worth talking about. Well, of course everyone's going to be offended. And so for a journalist to ask that, it's like, what the hell's with you? What planet do you inhabit? Don't you understand that your entire discipline is predicated on not only your right to offend someone, but the responsibility that you have to offend people? It's like, it's thinking is an offensive act, which is why tyrants hate it, right? Because one of the rules in a tyranny is, don't think. Why? Because I already know all the answers, and you're supposed to accept my answers as the tyrant, and so there's no need for your thinking. And you might be saying, well, my life isn't going as well as it could. And the tyrant says, well, you don't get to think that, because in my utopian tyranny, everything's perfect. And if you're suffering, that means you're politically suspect. Because you're suffering, your inability to recognize that the utopia has already manifested itself, your unhappiness is actually a political crime. But if you just keep it to yourself, well, we'll let you keep your head. But if you have if you're driven to the extreme where you have to express the fact that you're unhappy, perhaps, that your child doesn't have enough to eat, then it's off to the gulag with you and all your family as well, because there'll be no thinking here. And even if there is, there'll certainly be no talking. Here's something that happened recently in Venezuela. This is worth thinking about for all the people who harbor collectivist utopian dreams. Venezuela, the Venezuelan government, about 2 months ago, this was reported in the New York Times, which is not a newspaper, I would say, that would be intrinsically biased against Venezuela, said that it was now illegal to diagnose the cause of a child's death in a Venezuelan hospital as starvation. Because the Venezuelan government's answer to the problem of children starving was to make it illegal to notice it in hospitals. And that's a tyranny, right? That's a place where thought is not allowed. That's a place where free speech is not allowed. So it seems to me that that's not a good place to go, to say the least. And we've gone there many times in the last 150 years, and we should perhaps think very hard about whether or not we ever want to go there again.